Welcome back, everyone. We're kicking off a new deep dive today, and this one is all about AI agents. And we know you're here because, just like us, you're fascinated by this rapidly evolving field. Every day, it seems like there's another breakthrough.
It really is an incredible time to be watching this space unfold.
It is, and I think for a lot of people, when they hear AI agent, they maybe think of, I don't know, like a chatbot. But these are something. Well, they're a lot more than that.
Yeah, they're definitely not just your average chatbot.
Right. I was thinking, a chatbot is kind of like you go into a store and you ask the clerk a question, they can give you the answer.
Yeah.
But an AI agent, it's more like having like a super efficient personal assistant
That's a great analogy.
because they can handle tasks.
Yeah.
But they can also like learn your preferences, anticipate your needs. They're proactive.
Exactly. And it's the shift from reactive systems to proactive problem-solving entities that's really at the heart of what makes AI agents so powerful.
Okay, so we've used this term a couple of times, AI agent. Well, let's make sure everyone's on the same page. Basically, there are these software systems that can act autonomously, they're goal-oriented, they can learn, and they can adapt.
Right. And all of that is powered by some pretty amazing technologies like machine learning, natural language processing, and automated planning.
And that brings us to the how. How do these things actually work? The sources we've been looking at, they break down the process into these 5 steps: information gathering, analysis, decision-making, action execution, and then this learning and adaptation phase.
Yeah, and it's fascinating how closely these steps mirror human decision-making in a lot of ways.
Totally. So information gathering, that's like the AI agent's senses is how it perceives its environment.
Right. It could be reading text, interpreting images, analyzing sensor data, anything it needs to understand what's going on around it.
Then it has to make sense of all that information. That's the analysis part.
Exactly. And that's where its AI capabilities really come into play. Sifting through all that data, identifying patterns, extracting insights. It's all about building an understanding of the situation.
Okay, so now it knows what's going on. What does it do? Well, that's where decision-making comes in. Based on its analysis, it decides what action to take to achieve its goal.
And this can be anything from a simple pre-programmed action to a more complex strategy adapted to new information. It can even come up with totally new solutions.
So it's made its decision. Now it's got to actually do something. Action, execution.
Right. This is where the agent interacts with the world, like sending an email or controlling a robot. It all depends on what the goal is.
Okay, and then that last piece, learning and adaptation. That's what really sets AI agents apart. They don't just follow instructions. They learn from their experiences, and they get better over time.
Exactly. Every interaction, whether it's a success or a failure, provides valuable data for the agent to refine its models, its understanding, and its decision-making. It's a continuous cycle of improvement.
And that learning and adaptation is fueled by some seriously cutting-edge research. I was reading about modeling social action. That sounds particularly intriguing.
It is. As these agents become more integrated into our lives, they need to be able to understand social cues. Not just what we say, but how we say it.
So like tone of voice, facial expressions.
Right, even cultural norms. And researchers are developing models that allow these agents to recognize and respond to all of those subtle social cues.
Wow, it's almost like teaching AI to be socially intelligent.
It is. It's about making our interactions with these systems feel more natural, more intuitive. And that has huge implications for the future of how we'll collaborate with AI. And it's not just about social intelligence. Our sources also highlight the importance of visibility into AI agents. As these agents become more complex, more autonomous, it's crucial that we can understand how they're making decisions.
Yeah, transparency is super important, especially if we're going to be entrusting AI agents with, important tasks. But how do we actually get that visibility? Like, how do we see into the AI's thought process?
It's definitely a challenge, especially with those systems that are based on deep learning. They're often called black boxes for a reason because their internal workings can be really hard to understand, even for the people who design them.
So how do we open up these black boxes?
Well, researchers are working on some really cool techniques to try to visualize and interpret what's going on inside an AI agent's head. It's kind of like, imagine trying to understand how the human brain works, but for AI.
That's a pretty wild analogy.
Right, but that's what they're doing. They're developing tools to track, like, the activation of neurons in a neural network, or map the flow of information through the decision-making process. It's all about trying to make sense of how these agents arrive at their conclusions.
Okay, so that's one challenge. Then there's this whole idea of multi-agent systems, which sounds incredibly complex. What does that even mean?
So imagine you have a bunch of these AI agents, each with their own special skills, and they're all working together to achieve some common goal. It's like a team of specialists, but they're all AI.
That sounds like it could get pretty chaotic.
Huh.
What are some of the challenges there?
Well, for one, communication. They need to be able to share information effectively, coordinate their actions in a dynamic environment. And that's not easy, especially when things change, You need really robust communication protocols to make sure everyone's on the same page.
It's almost like designing a whole society of AI agents where each agent has its own goals, but also has to cooperate to achieve something bigger.
That's a great way to put it. And just like in human societies, you need rules, you need norms, you need mechanisms for dealing with conflict. Otherwise, things can fall apart pretty quickly.
And of course, we can't forget about the impact of LLM-based agents. I mean, it feels like large language models are behind so much of the progress we're seeing.
Oh, absolutely. LLMs like ChatGPT have shown us just how powerful language is when it comes to AI. They can understand and generate human-like text, which opens up a whole world of possibilities for AI agents.
We've given them this amazing tool for communication and interaction.
Right. And that changes everything. We can interact with them in more natural ways, give them more complex instructions. It's a whole new level of human-AI interaction.
Okay, so we've talked about the cool stuff. Now let's get real for a minute. I think a lot of people hear about all this and they think, okay, but what about jobs? Are robots going to take over the world?
Yeah, job displacement is a valid concern, and it's something we need to take seriously. But I think it's important to remember that AI agents are tools.
Right, and like any tool, they can be used for good or bad.
Exactly. It all depends on how we choose to design them, implement them, integrate them into our workplaces.
So it's not about AI replacing humans. It's about
Augmenting human capabilities, freeing us up from those tedious, repetitive tasks so we can focus on more creative, strategic, and frankly, more fulfilling work.
it's about transforming the nature of work itself.
Exactly. It's human-AI collaboration, not replacement.
And to do that effectively, we need to understand how to communicate with these agents. Our sources talk a lot about prompt engineering, which seems to be a crucial skill.
It is. Prompt engineering is basically the art of crafting effective prompts, those inputs that guide the AI agent to give us what we want.
So it's more than just giving it a command.
It's about understanding how to talk to it, how to frame your requests in a way that the AI agent understands and can act upon. It's about being clear, concise, and specific. Like giving someone directions, the more details you give, the better they'll understand where to go.
So no more like vague instructions. We got to be super specific.
Exactly. And it's not just about the words themselves. It's about providing context. The more information you give the agent about the task, the desired outcome, the background, the better it'll be able to understand what you actually want.
Okay, so clarity, context,
Mhm.
any other key principles?
Well, it's also important to remember that this is an iterative process. You might have to experiment with different wording, different phrasing to find what works best for that particular agent. It's a bit like refining a recipe. You start with the basics and then you tweak it based on the results you get.
I like that analogy. So it sounds like prompt engineering is going to be a pretty essential skill for anyone working with these systems in the future.
Absolutely. The better you understand how to communicate with these agents, the more you'll be able to unlock their true potential.
And even with all this progress, it's important to remember that these systems aren't perfect. They have limitations.
Oh, definitely. One of the biggest challenges right now is their tendency to, well, sometimes they just make things up. They hallucinate information.
Whoa, that sounds a little scary.
It can be. It happens when they encounter situations they haven't been trained on or when they're asked to do something outside their expertise. So we need to be aware of that, be a little skeptical.
Don't just blindly trust everything they say.
Exactly. And another limitation is their memory or lack thereof. They can forget previous interactions, have trouble maintaining context over long conversations.
That's a pretty big deal, especially if we're talking about these agents being like our personal assistants or collaborators.
It is. But researchers are working on it, and we're seeing progress all the time.
So it sounds like the future of AI agent development is pretty exciting, even with these challenges.
It is. The pace of innovation is incredible, and we're really just at the beginning. Who knows what we'll be able to do with these agents in a few years.
Okay, so we've talked about what AI agents are, how they work, some of the really cool research that's happening. But I think what everyone wants to know is, what's next? What does the future hold for these things?
Well, I think it's easy to get caught up in the hype, But it's important to look at the research and see where things are actually heading. And one of the big areas is like improving their learning capabilities, like moving beyond just training them on tons of data and letting them learn more autonomously.
Oh, interesting. So like, instead of us having to feed them all the information, they can kind of explore and learn on their own.
Yeah, exactly. Like imagine an AI agent that can adapt to new situations, learn new skills as it goes, even take what it knows from one area and apply it to something totally different. That kind of adaptive learning is going to be huge.
That makes me think about those multi-agent systems we talked about. Like, as each individual agent gets smarter, how do they interact with each other? Are we going to end up with these AI societies that are like doing their own thing, working towards goals that we don't even understand?
It's a pretty wild thought, isn't it? Like all these AI agents forming these networks, exchanging information, making decisions. It's like almost a little unsettling.
Yeah, it's like something out of science fiction, but also like not that far-fetched.
Right. And I think that's why we need to be thinking about the bigger picture now. Like, how do we design these multi-agent systems so that they're working with us, not against us?
That's a good point. It's not just about the technology itself. It's about how we use it, how we control it.
Exactly. And it's a conversation we need to be having now before things get too far along.
Right, because once these technologies are out there, it's going to be a lot harder to like put the genie back in the bottle.
Exactly. But at the same time, we don't want to stifle innovation. I mean, there's so much potential here for good.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, think about all the ways these AI agents could be used to help us, like working with scientists to cure diseases or with engineers to design more efficient systems. The possibilities are pretty mind-blowing.
They really are. I think the key is to approach this whole thing with like a sense of cautious optimism. We need to be aware of the risks, but also excited about the possibilities.
I like that, cautious optimism. So for our listeners out there, what would you say is like the one thing they should take away from this deep dive?
I would say stay curious, stay informed. This field is moving so fast and it's only going to get more complex, more impactful. So keep learning, keep asking questions, and most importantly, keep thinking about how we can shape the future of AI in a way that benefits everyone.
Well said. It's been a fascinating conversation. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the world of AI agents. And to all our listeners, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.